Are you feeling torn between homeschooling your kids and keeping your family's income? Or maybe you're wondering how to guide your child's learning without having all the answers? If that sounds like you are definitely in the right place. Welcome to the Ultimate Homeschool Community Podcast, where homeschool dreams really meet real world support. I'm Tiffany Hernandez, here to help you connect with the tools, community, and business strategies to homeschool confidently and keep your family's income strong. If you're ready to lead, learn, and launch, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. So glad to have you here with me. It's the Ultimate Homeschool Community Podcast, and I'm your host, Tiffany Hernandez. Today, we have Tess. She has her own collective. So welcome, Tess.
Hi there.
Can you share a little bit about what you do and how you got into this space?
So I've homeschooled since my boys were in kindergarten. And through that journey, I have learned that one thing is really important, and that's creating balance in my life and my kids' life and their education. And so ultimately, after trying a bunch of things, we kind of came to the conclusion that I love and enjoy teaching my children, and they also respond really well to other people teaching them. And so I wanted to create an educational environment where they got to learn from me and they got to learn from someone else. And then ultimately, it turned into creating a part-time micro school kind of focused on homeschoolers. And so my kids wanted two things. They wanted to be able to have a voice in their own education and have choices. And they wanted a program that was very, very hands-on, project-based, unit studies where it encompasses all of the subject. So I kind of created what I didn't see in my immediate community, and I created Knowledge Seekers Homeschool Collective, and that's in Northeast Portland in Oregon. And so far, so it's just amazing so far. Yeah.
Awesome. And Tess came from another country. If you can't tell in her accent, she is from another country. Do you just want to share just a little bit? Because I love your accent and I'm so mesmerized by it. Can you just give us a little snippet?
I came from a different country. I came from Australia. And I didn't only come from Australia, I came from like a very unique like community there. It was very much alternative ways of living, being kind of I you say I like come from the bush, and that does evoke different visuals, but really what it means is like I lived like 30 minutes away from anywhere. I like ran around naked. I counted rocks. I really was raised in an environment where my parents wanted to make sure that I had a real childhood that was creative and exploratory and imaginative. And that turned out to look like what we would now call unschooling. And so that's kind of how my childhood started. And my parents were like the epitome of hippies. And so I think that's where, that whole movement of like kind of alternative options is kind of where it all stemmed from. And I think that we are in education moving towards other expressions of education, which I'm really excited about.
Yes, yes. This is awesome. So I'm really glad that you brought that piece of it in, which is really important in how you are transpiring that now into having some structure within a lot of open-ended boundaries, is how I would put it. Because although you have these projects, that is the overarching, topic, but the way that they express that topic, the way that they express that project is really based on the student or based on the group project, however that is that you have them doing those kinds of educational opportunities, right? And so we want to maybe pull back some of the onion layer there, because there is a lot of big box curriculum that are trying to come in and fill a void or a need, in terms of people or educators don't know what to do. They're so used to following a rule book or a play by play or a lesson plan or a schedule, that they have not been able to really have the freedom or know how or have time or all of these different reasons why they cannot create what is best for maybe their learning type or even what's best for their students. Can you share a little bit about your process with curriculum?
Yeah. So my personal process with curriculum was when I first decided to homeschool, I was honestly completely overwhelmed. I couldn't handle it. And so my theory was that if I could take care of the things curriculum wise that I felt ill equipped to handle, which was for me spelling and grammar and reading, because that was a challenge for me as a child. If I could take care of that part, then everything else I could really patch together and really more focus on what my kids wanted to learn. Because the beauty of homeschooling is flexibility. And the beauty of starting when my kids were in kindergarten was like, I really didn't think I could get it wrong in kindergarten, right? Because you've got 15 minutes a day of structured learning, and everything else is like 100% play based, throwing bean bags and saying the letter ah, right? So that's what my strategy was. It was kind of get support where I felt a little less confident. And then it was really just to create an eclectic learning environment for the boys. And so that's honestly how I have seen it most work and pan out for parents is to kind of come from a place of child focused learning. I think parents, but also kids can thrive because I don't play an instrument, so I have to outsource that. And I can do that in multiple ways. I just found like was offering a free homeschool kind of like tester for music. And so my boys are doing that right now with me. And then I've found other like external like, and so um that's what I feel like the beauty of homeschool is that flexibility. And I just like gave two offerings, right? Like there's a free and there's a paid. So homeschooling doesn't have to be really expensive. I think we can make it really expensive. But I feel like there's so many rich opportunities out there. You obviously have to be in a place where you can be with your kids so that there's a privilege there. But other than that, it doesn't have to be super expensive to provide a collective learning.
Well, and I think you mentioned something there too that I'd like to touch on, which is, having that privilege to homeschool your children. And I think there's something that we can dive into there as well, because it's really creating a financial stability for the household to allow for you to homeschool. There are other ways of bringing income in. And like you've mentioned, you've got your micro school. That is one way that parents can stay home with their kids, help to educate them, as well as bring income into their households so they have the opportunity to homeschool, right? And so when we start looking at it in a different perspective, there is multiple ways to solve the financial need element.
Yeah, it can be really tricky, depending on kind of the history we've lived. And I think it's important to acknowledge that there is a component in there, especially for me. I mean, my family doesn't earn like six. We have privilege in different ways. So I
Right.
have privilege incredibly supportive. I have a mother that lives next door. So there's privilege in who we can surround ourselves with. There's privilege
Absolutely.
in money. Mine is not money privilege that allows me to homeschool. I'm also situationally, and that is one of the sole reasons that I can homeschool my kids. But I think when we take a moment to realize where we stand and how we kind of move through life, we can really, start to value things in a different way, and get creative and make sure that we're able to, um, kind of be community based in how we homeschool. And so Um, One thing I have really tried to, or I'm still working on creating, is just I want to be uh, like a resource for families. Do I want you to come to my school? For sure. But what I want is that people entering homeschooling have some options into like to feel supported.
Going from where we were with talking about privilege, can you share a little bit about your experience with that in terms of like you're talking about privilege within being able to homeschool and what that really has allowed for you, what that really means, not just like privilege of having the opportunity financially?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we were talking about the privilege of being in a place where we could homeschool, and I think sometimes that can transpire as monetary privilege, um, but often it can transpire, especially for me, um, being I'm very fortunate to and privileged to have a a social network, a family network, and I have a situation like we bought a house in 2012 and we're able to now have a situation that provides a space for us to homeschool. My mom lives really close by, and so being able to um, utilize family as a support system has been really important in our homeschool journey. And that actually has been more recent for me. My mom moved here in October, and so that's been wonderful to um, have that generational learning as well happening a little bit more now that my boys are older. And I just have the most amazing support system in friendships, and my boys have amazing friends and social connections. And I always say when people have kids, my number one recommendation is to create a village for yourself. And then it turns into a village for your kids, and then it turns into a village for your whole entire family. And that is one of the reasons that I can homeschool. And, I think it's always important to look at where you sit in life and to appreciate what you have. And it's allowed me to create a environment and an educational opportunity for my kids that give them what they asked for about 9 months ago. And they asked for a program that really gave them a voice and autonomy towards their own education. And they asked for a program that is hands-on and does project-based learning. So I think when we take a moment to see what we have in our life, um, we can kind of get creative. You were mentioning earlier, you're able to kind of get creative in how you homeschool. And sometimes it feels really overwhelming. Um, but it's been helpful for me to kind of break down like what can I do? Like what are my skills? And then what do I have surrounding me? What have I let in that can really support me?
Right. I think that's really beneficial too, that you see you have the gratefulness to appreciate all the benefits that you have in terms of the privileges for homeschooling. I don't think people really maybe appreciate all of those. Like you're saying, I mean, in many other countries, it's illegal to homeschool, unfortunately, and so that's one privilege that we have already is that the government does give us that ability to do that. And I do agree with you to create your own community is life for keeping yourself in good spirits, your children in a good standing, and it has transformed the way that we homeschool, which is why I'm so passionate about helping others create their own communities because of that fact that it's provided us family and it's provided us so many experiences and opportunities that otherwise wouldn't have been able to happen. I also have family that's close by, and I'm very grateful for that because they have allowed for us to do a lot of these things because of their assistance. And I know a lot of people, might not have family close by, but when you create your own village, they are your family. They become the people that you rely on. And it it can be overwhelming to homeschool by yourself. I was overwhelmed and I didn't even realize I was overwhelmed. I thought I had everything in the bag. And that was not the case. My kids will tell you, no, it was awful. We were, you know, basically doing school at home, and that's not what homeschool is all about at all. So, if you can share a little bit, I know we were getting into a little bit about your project-based learning and letting your kids have a voice in terms of what they're learning and having that autonomy in learning makes them so much more engaged in what they're doing. Can you share a little bit about how navigate creating lessons, coming up with projects and all of that?
Definitely, can I share with you how I've done that in the past, and then how I've been able to do that, and then how other parents can do that as well in the future. And so, essentially, with my I don't have education background, so I have a social work background, and I have a lot of experience with kids. But lesson planning, manipulating curriculum, that's not something I have any experience doing. And so I had mentioned that, I felt like I couldn't really go wrong with kindergarten. And I was right. We had such an amazing time. I would, my kids were really young when we started. They were about 6. And so maybe they don't know what they want to learn. So we had a lot of discussions about the options for learning. And then it was just really fun to make sure that um, I would just Google on Google, and I would be like, okay, what's out there? And so there's such an amazing array of opportunities online to create rich, hands-on experiential learning. And
Mm,
so
hmm.
honestly, Google is my best friend. And, now I know a little bit more about what I can find on there, and it's a lot quicker. But there was amazing research and also learning lesson plans that were already created on a lot of topics. But when you just mentioned like school at home, so school at home can be a really valuable option for students of a very specific way of learning. And then we have homeschooling, and homeschooling is a little bit different, as you know, where um, it's not mimicking the classroom. So it's all about eclectic learning and taking all of the ways that we learn. And we learn through smell, we learn through touch, we learn through what we see and what we hear, and like what we emotionally experience. And so that's kind of like how I kind of like to look at eclectic learning. One of the most enjoyable lessons that I created a unit study around um, Egypt. And for me, it was just such a wonderful thing to share with my kids because I learned about ancient Egypt when I was 14 in high school. And so it was really an emotional place for me to be able to share this beauty of what I learned when I was 14, but I got to share it with my kids at a time which they wanted to learn it, and they were only 8. So we did play and made esophaguses. We did little name tags and used arts and crafts to make their names in hieroglyphs. We watched videos and documentaries. We listened to music, and we filled out some sheets about um, and contrasting different things about ancient Egypt and current times. It was a really great math lesson. We made Rice Krispie treat pyramids. So eclectic learning and homeschooling, the beauty of it is the flexibility. And something that I am doing better at and I want to do better at is not worrying about what we get done, but making sure what we are doing is enjoyable. And for me, um, that's easy in some ways, but hard in some ways, because I think that we often teach the way we teach is out of fear. And my fear is that I won't teach my kids successfully, like how to read and write and be really good at that, because that's my fear when I was a kid, right?
Right.
So it's important to be like, okay, I have these goals for my kids. My goal is A, B, C, and D, but I can 100% guarantee you they are not my kids' goals. And so that I think is really important to separate when we're homeschooling. I think it's important for all those goals to be met eventually, but it's really important to make sure we're identifying what our goals are versus our kids. And so that is something really to kind of keep you on track, is to think about, well, what are your kids' goals actually, and kind of try to focus on that, and giving them autonomy in their education is where we find the passion in education, I think.
Right.
So yeah.
I love it. So basically, we're talking about the fact that intrinsic motivation and having the ability to go after stuff that you're motivated, topics that you're motivated in learning about, that you're interested in, because we do it as adults all the time. We want to go learn about a subject, we go look it up on YouTube or Google or in a book or whatever, and we go wholeheartedly into that subject, and everything else fades away. And there's all different things that touch that subject. You're reading, you're writing, you're learning how to research, you're reading statistics about this or that or whatever. You're comparing and contrasting, this person's opinion of the topic and that person's opinion of the topic. Like, we live life on projects. That's literally how we're living life. So when we're teaching the kids how to go and fish for themselves, that's what you're saying, is like they are going to have a more well-rounded from all the senses of learning by doing it in this manner. And there is school at home for a very specific group of people, and not everybody really enjoys that. So it's much more enjoyable for them to take that project that they want to learn, get their goals, like you're saying, their goals are the most important to them. And so if there's a way that you can wrap what you want them to learn into what they need and want to learn themselves, like, you can get everything done if you allow them to focus on what it is that motivates them the most.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that you mentioned like um it's like we project learn through as adults. And I think another way to say that is that we don't learn in isolation. And so
Right.
that's when eclectic learning is so beautiful, because if we can teach our kids um that kind of learning and the passion for knowledge, then it seeps into adulthood and that community building that we've been talking about. And I think another important thing to kind of talk about and acknowledge is we're in a new kind of phase, I think, of education. We're starting to think about like, okay, so we've done this for X amount of time. Like, is it working? Is it not working?
Right.
And so I'm trying to be a space for that intrinsic motivation and that passion for learning, and doing that in a way that highlights the voices of the kids. And so the program that I started is about kids having a voice and having autonomy in education. And but it really gets me thinking, and it's important to acknowledge that that's not what we've been doing as a society
Right.
recently. And so, yes, I created a program that allows kids to have autonomy in education. But what I have to remember is that we need to teach that actually. So, when I ask the kids, like, what do you want to learn? Not all the kids have had practice in answering that question.
Oh, yes.
So,
Oh, yes.
and you know what, to be honest with you, a lot of adults don't actually have historically the that skill. You know, when we expect 14-year-olds to know what they're going to do in 4 years from now when they graduate, we're expecting something that has never been asked of them. And
Yes.
so when we start fundamentally creating a educational space where kids do have a voice, but it's actually acknowledged and it's, you know, it's actually put into action, that's different than, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to study Egypt. Great. Well, I'm going to come up with a plan and you're going to do it. That doesn't work. They can say they want to study Egypt, and then we have to hear them and actually value their voice and have them part of the process. And so it is a teaching thing. We're, you know, teaching kids that they can have a voice. They do have a voice, and we will actually listen to it. So it's all the components that are important, um, which I am seeing it a lot more in education today, and homeschooling is an amazing opportunity to kind of create those foundational, you know, it's about telling a kid that they're worthy of, right? They're worthy of being passionate and not just being told what to do. Is kind
Absolutely.
of what I'm seeing. And I'm hoping, I know we were going to talk about micro schools, so I'm hoping that the education system really can blossom into a lot more little micro schools throughout individual communities, and we can actually be providing these spaces on not a larger scale, as in like a classroom of 20 kids where this happens, but micro scale.
Right. And we're talking about in terms of allowing smaller groups, maybe 4 or 5 families to get together and do multi-age learning, or to even have, a couple grade levels together to do these projects, because in the real world, your job is not isolated to only the people in your age group, right? You're having to work with all ages. And I I've mentioned this on a few other of the podcasts with a few other interviewers about the fact that Forbes came out with an article this past year about the current work environment, and the current companies are already firing the new graduates that are coming into the workspace because of their lack of ability to be able to critical think and communicate and handle the workload. And it's a huge issue to the fact of they are now jobless. So
Mhm.
we have to take back education into our hands, whether that's in a micro school setting, in a co-op setting. There is a few differences there, but it's the whole focus is alternative learning for the purpose of fulfilling the roles that these children are going to end up fulfilling in society, and helping them get there instead of just creating a factory-based learning model.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think the factory-based learning model um, it shuts off the voice that you are asking kids to have when they are 21 and entering the workforce. So um, it's kind of creating the opposite effect. We're asking kids to know things we've never taught them
Mhm.
in adulthood. So I was so incredibly fortunate to have parents that would say, "What do you think?" And they wouldn't only say, "What do you think?" They would listen to me, they would hear me, and then they would allow my like the action of my idea. And so, did my parents let me do whatever I wanted? Absolutely not. They were the parents. They created guidelines and boundaries. But if I thought a scenario wasn't fair, I got to say it wasn't fair. I got to say why, and we got to have a conversation about it. So when we teach kids that they are valued of being heard, we're not teaching them they have a right or they're righteous by the time they're 21.
Right.
We're teaching them you have a presence in the room that is worthy of being there. And when we teach kids that in a very fundamental way with the right intention, we also teach them, look at everyone else in the room. They also have a right and a value. So
Absolutely.
we're actually creating humans that want to be with other humans and be in connection with. And I think when we are able to have alternative education and we're able to not just take public school and make it smaller, because public school isn't working whether it's 5 kids or 25 or 30 kids.
Right.
So it's actually how we're going about it that needs to change. And so I have unfortunately seen micro schools wanting to do that. They want to take public school and make it tiny. They want a curriculum for math. They want a curriculum for English. They want a curriculum for science and social studies and history. And like we talked about, that is a viable model for a very small percentage of the population. My hope and my passion is to see more individuals being empowered, I'm hoping, from the government, but we'll see, about creating alternative learning environments. And you can have an incredibly successful, diverse class with 15 kids with this model of creating autonomy in education. There's a beauty in really tiny little co-ops also, because you get that very connected, familiar kind of education and learning. And 15 kids can also be very successfully encouraged to have the same kind of autonomy in their education through a structured kind of learning environment too. I think we're on the tip of the iceberg with creating this, because I think parents, they're getting it, right? We're like,
Oh yeah.
okay, the school's not perfect, but I'm overwhelmed. Like, what are the options? And so, like, circling back to what we talked about, like, let's look at our wider community. Like, I don't personally have the education, so I was trying to find, how can I sustainably create a program where my skills are used, but also I hire a teacher. And so I'm in the process of that.
Right.
And it's been amazing learning opportunity for me. It's so wonderful to watch the kids thrive and have a voice and come up with their own ideas. And we have an amazing teacher as a guide, Julia. She acknowledges the kids learning. She acknowledges how they all learn differently in their personalities. And so to just guide kids in their own education for us is our goal. And so far it's working amazingly. So I am excited that we're kind of at the forefront of this alternative education movement, which is micro schools right now.
That is amazing. You've got so many gold nuggets there that I could touch on, but unfortunately we're running out of time. However, we'll definitely have to have another conversation, because you've touched the tip of the iceberg in terms of giving the kids confidence, which is where, we're coming into the having a better mindset, growth mindset, having a better self-awareness, having the confidence, right? Kids are lacking all these skills because you're right. In the classroom, they are told, no, be quiet. Your way doesn't matter. Your ideas don't matter. This is how we're learning, and this is what you're doing, and go do it. And that's it. And that's not autonomy. That is just authoritative, And so we have to peel back those ideas and really let the child shine. Okay, they don't all learn the same, and that's okay. And these ways that we're trying to alternate are to allow for each of those to shine in the best way that they learn. And then, you don't have to have a degree. I don't have a degree in education either. So this is where we really touch, but you have the social element, right? Social emotional learning is huge right now, especially because of all the social media, all of the internet-based learning, all of the video, all of the technology. We are learning the connection with each other. We are losing all of that, even though we're learning in a different way how to do those things via Facebook and Zoom and all of that. We've lost the connection of in-person communication. And so we have to bring that back. And what better way to do it in a small, tailored environment where it's not overwhelming? Children can actually have a voice because they're not being, drowned out by hundreds of other students. And the teacher can actually sit down with each individual student and see where they're at, see what their needs are, and help them in their personalized journey, which is what we're lacking severely in the more public school framework.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. And I think what I would really love parents to hear is that just like me and you don't have to be an educator.
Right.
And I want parents. I just sent out a newsletter, and my message for everyone was like, you are enough, and so are your kids. Like, trust yourself and trust your kids. It's so much more important to be raising beautiful humans that feel like they have self-worth than
Yeah.
it is to be raising a kid that can, I don't know, do 584 divided by 3.5. And there's value in that, but we're creating humans that want to be in the world and are confident in who they are. And we do that by listening and by believing that we ourselves as parents and our kids are enough.
Absolutely. I think that's a good ending point because that really is the basis of homeschool, right? We are giving the voice back. We're bringing the education back to the home, where it starts. Every parent is an educator, right? We are educating from the time they are born, and we have lacked the confidence of doing that because of the way of society, and we need to gain that back. And so I think this is the best way to do that. And it's also an opportunity for the parents to not only show their children that they're worthy, but also to see, hey, I don't have to do things just one way. I can do things the way that fills my needs and the other needs best.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you have people that want to reach you for your Microschool, where can they best find you if they have questions for you, just to reach out and connect? Where would you like for them to find you online?
Yeah, you can find us online at knowledgeseekerspdx.com. And my information's on there. And like I said, I really like to support families no matter where they're at. It's about having confidence, and I love to problem solve with people about how they can homeschool. Maybe you're a full-time parent, and it can be doable. And I would just like people to feel a lot more confident. So any questions you have, I'd be happy to support you.
Awesome. And we will have the links in the show notes, and you can contact Tess through there. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Happy homeschooling, everyone. Take care. Thanks so much for joining me on the Ultimate Homeschool Community Podcast. Before you go, though, don't miss out. Check those show notes down below so you can get those exclusive freebies and helpful resources and some practical tips that we've been sharing to support your homeschool journey. If you found value in today's episode, which I'm sure you have, please, please, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, share it with another parent who needs it. You know, the more reviews and comments that we get, the more parents we can reach with the support they need. And so your next step towards confident homeschooling is literally just a click away. Just check below. So just check out those notes, and we'll see you next time.